Welcome back to the Mastering Runeterra podcast with Jae and Bae, the #1 source for competitive Legends of Runeterra news and information. If you're looking for the best decks to play right now, be sure to check us out on Twitter at Master Runeterra or in our Discord. And if you want to take the next step in leveling up your game, check out our Runeterra team on Patreon, where we do weekly learning calls and one-on-one coaching. Now strap in and grab yourself some Poro snacks, because we are about to start Mastering Runeterra.
Welcome back to the Mastering Runeterra podcast with Jae, Bae, and our very special guest today, Fresh Lobster. Before we dive into everything, though, I just want to give a quick shout out to all of our patrons. Thank you guys so much for supporting us, for making all of our kind of dreams come true. We are coming up on 1 year of this podcast, and we could not have done it without you guys. So seriously, thank you so much. All right, so typically we don't have too many guests, but today we have a very special one. Why don't you, for anyone that doesn't know, about you personally, why don't you give us a little synopsis on, how did you get in the game? What have you been doing? Give us a little breakdown.
All right. In-game name is Fresh Lobster. I started playing this game at the breakout of the Corona pandemic, pretty much. It just got into open beta. It was a perfect timing to jump into the game. Started just with a competitive focus, first of all. So playing ladder, playing those community tournaments. Realized I had a bit of talent for it, especially with coming from a poker background and so on. And just got into it more and more. And then at some point, I remember the OG shoutcasters, Casanova and Blevins, were actually the ones that first suggested to me after a tournament, why don't you give content creation a shot? And so I got into that more and more over the next year or so, while I started competing a bit less and less. And this is where we are now. Started focusing more on YouTube and writing articles and stuff like that, doing a bit of coaching, but also still playing some tournaments and so on. And finally made it to the Mastering Runeterra podcast as well.
Awesome. I actually didn't know that you had a poker background. Bae and I also come from a poker background. When did you get into poker? What's your experience there?
Oh, that's news for me as well. I didn't know you were also previous poker players. I got interested in it in my teenager years already, probably when I was like 12, 13. But back then it was more like reading a bit of theory, playing for a bit of play money. But once, probably when I turned 16, 17, with a account of my parents, I started grinding a bit online. Didn't really enjoy it that much though. But once I turned 18, it's the legal age for casinos in Germany. I'm not sure if it's the same in the Americas, but it's 21, right? If I recall correctly.
Yeah, it's 21. Mm-hmm.
But all right. Once I hit 18, basically started playing live poker and enjoyed it so much more. Of course, the winnings were a lot more inconsistent, but I don't know. It was just not that grindy, not that monotonous like online poker could be. And I, over the next 6 or 7 years, pretty much since the pandemic breakout, I always did it as a bit of a hobby, which also turned out to be a bit of a side job. Of course, very volatile income in live poker, but long term, you could earn a bit on the side. And it was very nice to have, as I'm mainly still a university student. I do medicine, almost a year and a half maybe from being done. But right now taking a bit of a break and focusing more on the content creation life, the card game life.
That's
how
very
about you
similar.
guys, actually? I'm very curious about your backgrounds in poker as well.
So my story is actually very similar. I've always had a thing for card games. And if it sounds like we're interrupting each other, there's a bit of a delay because it's such a long distance. I've always had an interest in card games. When I was about 8 or 9, I went on vacation with my parents and on a cruise ship, and my uncles and aunts taught me how to play poker because they were just playing. on the table. And so I thought this was fantastic and the coolest game I've ever seen. So what I did was I would round up other kids my age on the cruise ship, and I'd get them to borrow change from their parents. And every night we'd go and we'd play poker for like pennies, right? And yeah, I got home after that. Tough for me to really do anything with it, even though like online poker existed. I had access to the internet. One side of my family really did not like anything that had to do with gambling. Really not. So I got into things like, I guess, like Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, but I always really enjoyed card games, blackjack, poker. And so when I was in high school, I was super into blackjack. I taught myself how to count cards. I practiced all the time. I read all the books and everything, and then realized that I was 14 years old and can't enter a casino for 7 more years. So yeah, put that on the back burner. And then, yeah, I got to like 1920 and I hit the poker books, right? I was like, okay, we're going to do it. Turned 21, stepped foot in a casino, lost all my money the first night because that's how it goes, right? And yeah, and then I just loved it so much. I was a cash game grinder. So like I would play like low stakes, 1, 3, 2, 5 cash games, tournaments every now and then, just enough to like it just pay bills. That was it. It was fun. I still had other jobs and everything. But yeah, I loved it.
Oh man, I'm like having so much nostalgia and flashbacks. I love that I get to tell this story. Okay, so let's see. I got into card games. I got into Magic in high school. And I got super into it. And I remember very distinctly, I was like probably 17, so maybe a couple years later, and I was at like the local card store. We're playing cards, and this is when the poker boom just happened. It's like Chris Moneymaker 1, the boom had taken off. It's the freest money ever. And two of the guys that are like older that play Magic, one of them's just like, hey bro, can you just like ship me 10,000 on this site, and I'll ship you 10,000 on that site? Like, yeah, whatever, cool. And I was like, what? Like we're playing Magic for like $20. So I'm like, I gotta fucking win, man. I gotta win this draft here. I need this $20. And they're just like 10 grand, no big deal. Yeah, I got you. Throw it over there. I was like, what is this poker thing? Get me in. I think I immediately like went home, like downloaded, got like the free $20 or $50 that you got or whatever, and started grinding. I also so the legal age to gamble in where I am is 19, but when we were 18, we would go to the Chinatown casino and they wouldn't ID us because we were white kids and they didn't really know like how old we were. And we would just get in. And we would play like 4-8 limit, limit poker. And it just kind of took off from there. When I turned 21, I played in the World Series of Poker main event because I went on like a trip on Party Poker. I won a bunch of big online games. It was the easiest money. I remember I would like make $1,000, cash it out, like send it to a friend to get cash, and then like go party with my friends and just like, hey, who wants shots? We'll get a limo, whatever, and then just do it again the next day, like 4 or 5 times a week. When I was like 20 or something. And I remember distinctly some of the older guys being like, how long is this going to last? And I was like, forever. Why wouldn't it last forever? Yeah. Turns out people won't just lose money for all time. And then it got harder and harder and harder and harder. Fast forward, like, I don't know, 5-6 years later, and it was a lot harder. But yeah, that's how I got into it. I'm really curious. I've always equated Magic a little bit more to chess, and I've always said that I thought Runeterra was a lot like poker, that there was a lot of leveling, there was a lot of different things that you could do in the sense of like, the deck that you play would often matter less than how you played it. Like you'd see players like JO1 or even U2, it's less about which deck you're playing, whereas in Magic, if you're playing this deck versus that deck, there's only so much you can do. Whereas in Runeterra, there's a lot of room to maneuver. There's a lot of room to, there's a lot of different decision trees you can go down. I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts on the comparisons there of Runeterra to poker.
I guess I'll start off by saying I've never fully been into MTG. I played it as a kid when I was maybe like 8, 9, 10 years old. So I never really got into the competitive side of it. I know the interactivity system is somewhat similar to Runeterra, right? As in, on every action, you have the chance to do a reaction, which is very nice, which is also rather reminiscent of poker. But overall, what I can say for sure, like I don't know much about Magic and chess, the comparison, but the poker fundamentals are super applicable in Legends of Runeterra. And like even a lot of moves kind of you can just immediately correlate. Like for example, what I like to think of whenever I do an open pass, especially as a control deck, is kind of like a check raise in poker. It's like you're hoping, you're basically trying to trap your opponent. And a lot of stuff does play into it. Hand reading is a great example. Reading intentions as well. But I will say right away what I personally most struggled with, and what you probably have way more of a background in if you come from MTG, is deck building and deck refining. Because if you only come from poker, there is no deck building. You're forced to play with the same 52 cards over and over. That was something that definitely took some time to get adapted to. But overall, I find this very interesting. I was going to ask you guys the question if you have the same feeling, that a lot of people who come from a poker background, I feel like they're much more adaptable in Runeterra. Like maybe because they think about the game more fundamentally rather than about decks specifically, that it's easier for them to switch decks, to switch play styles, and to kind of change their game plan according to what's happening much more quickly, basically, to pick things up more quickly. Maybe
I think you're right. I think poker players tend to approach it from, well, one, definitely more like analytical, and it has to do more with their plays, right? So if they're losing, a poker player will look at it and go, it's something I'm doing. Where like other card game player or someone new might go, it's my deck, right? And so or it's like, oh, it's because I'm not playing this card. It's because the matchups are always bad. So I definitely
got lucky.
Because they got lucky, yeah. So I definitely agree with you there. Yeah, it's always RNG, man. It's always RNG. But yeah, to bring it back to, you're saying like open passing is kind of like checking, like check raising somebody. I made that comparison actually like the other day, like a couple days ago. I was coaching, and someone was like, "Oh, well, why don't we like sharp side and attack here?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, we don't want to do that because then we're like out of position, right? Because then we have to do something first. We're like, it's like being under the gun. Like I don't want to do that. I want to be the one in position. I want to see what our opponent does first, and that's such like a poker concept that I think easily translates to Runeterra. That's helped me so much, is trying to put the onus on my opponent to do something first so I can respond.
Yeah, setting traps is huge in both games, right? Like that's how you win. One of the sayings that I love the most about poker is that you don't make money off of how good you are. You make money off of your opponent's mistakes. For instance, if you're the 9th best player in the world, but you're playing the 8 people that are better than you, you're going to lose money. Doesn't matter how good you are. And so it's not so much about how insanely good you are. It's about, if your opponent's not making mistakes, you're not going to make any money. So it's about trying to trap them, trying to trick them, trying to get them to make mistakes in poker to get their money. And it's the same in Runeterra. You see it all the time, like what we're talking about now, passing to them, getting the other person to act first. And again, just like at high level poker, you'll see people with like really strong hands, like crazy strong, and they're like, check, go to the next card. Like they check, go to the river even, and they have like, quads versus straight flush or like something like that. And you'll see it in Runeterra where you'll see people be like, like full 4 mana, 3 spell mana, bunch of cards they can cast, pass back, like 5 mana, pass back. Like there's this constant, jockeying for position and the whole thing. So I'm curious, if you didn't play other card games, but you played poker, how did you get into Runeterra then? Like what brought you? Did you play League or any other Riot games?
I did play some other card games. So as a kid, I also was a TCG collector, like the classic Yu-Gi-Oh! TV series. Okay. Oh, I had to have these cards. Naruto was on. Oh, I had to have these cards. World of Warcraft trading card game. I don't know the rules, but I gotta have this card. Like that type of stuff. And then Hearthstone came out, and I did play it, like I would say casually, but I did still hit Legend most seasons and so on. So like this casual competitive thing, like it's still fun to win, but no aspirations. And then, poker for a while. And I did play Artifact. I actually really like, it's still my favorite or second favorite card game of all time next to LOR. And I know it's absolutely like they messed up a lot of things, and it's not newbie friendly. It's not very casual friendly, but I love the strategy of it. It was so deep. It was almost playing like a real time strategy game, and that's when I also first started to think about the competitive side more. Like, okay, there are some community tournaments, a tiny little bit of prize pools here and there. Let's try it out, and that's when I got into the competitive gaming side. That was probably, what was it, like a year before Runeterra came out? I mean, it's not super long ago since the whole artifact blunder happened, right? And from that, yeah. So I'd say like some casual competitive footings, and that also made the transition to LOR easier. So I was at least a bit aware of how ccgs, tcgs work, and also I kind of knew what deck building was, although I never really did it.
I also loved Artifact. I still have it downloaded on my computer, like because they have it unlocked. They have like Artifact unlocked or whatever. I still like every 2 months I'll like load it up and play a game.
I never played it. I saw the big announcement of they're gonna have that $1 million prize pool tournament or whatever, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna keep an eye on that, waiting for that to become a thing.
Exactly.
And then I never actually played it. I watched the documentary of it though. I don't know if you guys saw that. You haven't seen it? Oh, you should watch it. It's got a bunch of like, let's see, Charmer and Swim and I don't know, a bunch of the people that are in LOR now.
Where do I find it? Is it on like YouTube?
Yeah, I think it's on YouTube.
I'll try to find it. But a lot of the guys started in Artifact, or at least got a big push. Like Swim did Artifact, Mogwai did Artifact,
Grappler did Artifact,
Raptor did Artifact. Yeah, a lot of people were in Artifact because it just felt like the next step in card games.
Yeah, Grappler, not Raptor.
Mm-hmm.
Grappler. Okay, I was like, I didn't know Raptor did that, but okay, I'll go with it. I was like, I'm pretty sure he was still playing Magic at this point. But I didn't know Grappler did Artifact. That's really interesting.
I didn't know.
Yeah, and so I was super into it. I loved the game as well. I liked like you said, super deep strategy. It was not casual friendly at all, and they really, really screwed up with the release. But like, I think it had a lot of stuff I really enjoyed, and that was one of the first times that I actually looked at a card game and went like, okay, I'm going to try to be one of the best here, because I played a lot of Magic and I was really good at Magic, but I wasn't like, you'd never put me in a top 50 players list. Like, no one knew who I was, right? I was just some dude who was like a local crusher and qualified for the big tournaments. So yeah, it took Artifact for me to consider it, and then it took Runeterra for me to like do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What I find very interesting about both of these games is that I think those were some of the first card games that had high enough of a skill ceiling to more or less consistently have the highest, like the better player win, and to show that in tournaments even. Because in games like Hearthstone and so on, even though they were much bigger, like the maximum win rate you could realistically get at a high profile tournament is maybe like 60-65% in Swiss rounds, and like 55 in the top cut if you're a hardcore crusher. And I felt like in both Artifact and LOR, it's much higher. It's like, I'm still not sure because the sample size is still not huge, but a lot of people can post like 70 to 80% win rate somewhat consistently. And I find that very interesting because on one hand side, it should say, okay, these games are great for competitive purposes. The better player wins more often. It's interesting from a competitive point of view. At the same time, overall, LOR has a lot less of an infrastructure on the competitive side of things. Like, prize pools are much smaller and so on. I'm wondering what your guys' take is on this, especially with the competitive interest that you have with the tournament organization that you guys are doing.
Yes, me. I want this. I have so many thoughts on this. Yeah, so one of the big problems with Magic was that exactly. That like no matter how good you were, like 60, the best in the world were around like 60% win percentage. And when you're playing, whatever it is, 12, 14 rounds of a tournament full of hundreds of people, and you only get like maybe 4 of those tournaments, 5 of those tournaments a year. If you're top 8ing 1, like that's pretty good. That's really good. If you top 8 2, that's amazing. And like if you top 8 3, like you're just insane. It just doesn't really like happen that much. And so one of the big problems they had in Magic was that it was always different people every time. each like top 8 was different. The winners were different. And so like as a viewer trying to make it like an esport or a viewer experience, it just didn't work. Like you have to be really ingrained in the ecosystem, the scene. Yeah. That's what I meant to say. It's like in football. Like if I follow football, but like pretty casually. I know like, you know, some of the big players and the teams that are doing well, but like the kind of newer quarterbacks, like I don't know, the quarterback for the Bills or the Chargers this year. Maybe you guys won't this won't make sense to you, but
American football,
yeah. Long story short, I don't know their names. They're very good players. They're doing fantastic. They carry their teams. I have no idea who they are. And so if it was different every single year, if there was never like a LeBron or like a Tom Brady or whatever, it's like I wouldn't follow it, right? Like there's no stories. You can't build the stories up, or like Faker in League of Legends. Like I don't even play League, but I know who Faker is, and a couple of the other like big names, because they're you know, there's skill and they keep rising to the top. And so that was a big problem with Magic, and it's why they created a pro league of just the top players, but then they botched it, which is really unfortunate. But now come to Runeterra, and like you say, like, yeah, the top players are rising to the top all the time. It's like, it's kind of like the same in poker. Like if you take like a year, the top players are just always winning. Like they're not going to be losing really. And so in Runeterra, you know, I mean, look at like both of you guys, like a lot of the top players are, you know, like top 32 of seasonals. That's 1,000-person tournament, and you're making top 32. Like what is that? 0.3% or something of the field, like a crazy small, and people are doing it like it's like, like, you know, the top players are like 7-2, like in my sleep. It's almost like Bae, how many you've done? Like 5 of them. One of mine's done 5. There's lots of people that have, you know, Henneke's done a bunch. And I think that makes for a fantastic opportunity to have this competitive scene where you have these top players every time. You know, these like Bae's going to be there, Lobster's going to be there, Allen's going to be there. You know, they'll be at the top of the rankings, a bunch of these people going against each other, and you could tune in week after week or month after month, and they'll just still be there. And so, yeah, that's what I want to see. I want to see this big competitive, you know, ecosystem. And it hurts my heart so much to see all these different games get it wrong in different ways. So like Magic has the problem that the game itself doesn't work this way. And then also they try to do a pro league and they botched it hard. Hearthstone, lots of RNG, and I don't really know their pro league. Apparently they kind of botched it too. Like I couldn't figure out how to get into it. It was like not very accessible.
It's so confusing.
And then LOR crushed it with the game, made the fantastic game, and isn't supporting like competitive, isn't like pushing competitive really. And I'm like, geez, if I could just take just take LOR, the game, and then take like Magic the Gathering, what organized play was, and then like, I don't know, the money that Hearthstone has, and you just package that up, you got a winner. But for some reason, they all get something wrong. I'm hoping though that one, we are seeing competitive LOR grow quite a bit. Like you were saying, when I came in, there was like on the weekends, there was like a $50 tournament or maybe $100 prize pool tournament. And that was the big tournament. And that was it. And now like we're doing this championship series that's like $8,000 in prizes. You got like Runeterra Life doing $1,000 tournaments. You got Max just did like a $2,500 tournament. Like those are significantly bigger than like $100. Nothing wrong with the $100 tournaments, but like you could see that like it's growing and it's growing. And you know, I'm hoping that Riot's just taking their time. Like Riot's not dumb, first of all, right? They make fantastic games. They know what they're doing. It seems like the game wasn't really complete. You know, like we just got the 10th region. It could have just been in beta this whole time, which I think would have maybe made more sense. It's like, okay, now the game's complete and now we can push more things out. We haven't got new formats, like a limited format, like a draft format would go really far. Other kinds of constructed formats, you know, just different ways to play the game. So I'm really hoping that this announcement that we get next month is going to be like, you know, building on things, more larger tournaments, more formats, more reasons to play the game, fine-tuning some of these problems that we have with like you climb the ladder and then you can't, like, you're incentivized not to play, which is not good because like they have a gold mine here. I feel like they've got the game. It's so good. It's beautiful. It's like interactive. It's replayable. And now it's just they just have to like execute with it. And I honestly don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm like worried and excited. What are your guys' thoughts on this like announcement that's coming up this rest of the year? I have faith in them. I have like blind faith because they do such a good job at so many things. But I honestly, your guess is as good as mine.
Marjan, do you want to go first?
Yeah. I think what I think we'll see and what I hope to see are different things. I think we'll see something similar from what we saw last year with the seasonals and the worlds. But what I would like to see is like one more thing, right? One more thing. But I will admit to my focus has shifted a bit as a player and a community member. I've gone from basically being competitively focused, right? Tournaments are the only thing that matter, to more content focused. And I think you've experienced the same shift. So like while tournament play is still one of the most important things to me, it's not the most important thing to me anymore. I'll still try super hard for all the tournaments, right? But like I tend to think more about the health of the game, like what can we do to bring in new players, that kind of stuff, a little more than like how do we satisfy the pro players. Now I do want to satisfy the pro players because I'm a pro player, right? And so like that's good for me. But yeah, so I'm hoping to see basically the same but with something else. Like Jason said, I would love to see a new limited format. I think that'd be insane for the game. I know you didn't really play Magic, so you might not be super familiar, but like a Magic style drafting mode would be so fun, so incredibly fun, and it would do so much to bring in new people. So yeah, I'd love to see something like that.
Yeah, maybe expand on expeditions. It's a neat mode, but there's no incentive to play it. And I also, in Artifact, I almost exclusively played Draft. It was by far the most fun. It also gave it so much more replayability because every deck you build is different, every deck you face is different. Just unfortunately, it was tied to the monetary thing with having to buy every entry and so on. Yeah, it's a very interesting spot. So I absolutely agree with Jay in regards to the grassroots community seems to be growing, and the community organized competitive events. Everything seems to get better. The infrastructure seems to get better. At the same time, I felt like over the course of the last year that Riot themselves were losing interest in like hosting these big tournaments or events, or at least the purely competitive ones. I'm gonna be curious if you'll agree on me with me on this one, but I felt like the last announcement that Riot put out, it almost seemed like they were planning to tune down the seasonal tournaments or change them in a way. And that could definitely mean like prize pool cuts or something like that. And they also, even though the players all loved Worlds, it was an incredible event, it was incredible action, great coverage, and so on. I think the viewership numbers or total interest was not as high as Riot would have hoped it to be. And therefore, like at this point, I'm not sure if we'll get a World Championship or at least anything of that scale. I'm not super optimistic in at least for the next year or for the next months in official events from Riot. Another thing is kind of close to what Marjan was saying earlier on. They seem to be more focused on the game's growth, like on the player base growth as a whole, and that's why they invest more and more resources on Path of Champions and so on, like different game modes that are appealing to the masses and to mobile players. And I've also had this theory that over the course of the last year or so, with every new expansion, every new patch, they were trying to speed up the meta a bit. Ever since basically everyone realized that Targon was an abomination and no one wants to play 45 minutes games of LOR that come down to who invokes more Great Beyonds. I felt like they wanted the average... Yeah, some people do. Might be me sometimes. But I felt like the average game length was supposed to go down to actually be finished on turn 8 or 9 so that more people can play the game in their 10-minute breaks without having to worry about surrendering a match that they're probably going to win, but it takes 30 minutes, right? Therefore, yeah, it felt like right now the focus, at least of the company itself, of Riot, is on casual players and player base growth as a whole. And I hope that just long term that also translates into more competitive interest, maybe into more viewership for competitive events. And that will also incentivize more game modes, more tournaments, maybe different types of tournaments. Because, for example, I'm not sure if you remember, but close to the World Championship, there was also this Beyond the Battlewood Invitational event, which
I remember that. Yeah.
I thought was, yeah, it was quite the success. Of course, it had its downsides as well, mainly being an invitational. A lot of players were left out. But I felt like it was a creative format, yet it was somewhat competitive. And at the same time, the players as well as the viewers seemed to enjoy it. So maybe your guys' takes on like trying different formats, but as well as on if you agree with my a bit more pessimistic perspective in regards to Riot.
I definitely agree with your more pessimistic take. I think that's the same vibe I got from that announcement. It was like a, hey, we're revisiting it, but not in a wait until you see all the cool things we have planned way. It was like a, hey, we're revisiting it, maybe they'll come back kind of way. You know what I mean?
In it for the long haul kind of way.
Yeah. Which would be unfortunate, but yeah. I mean, if that's the direction they take the game, then that's the direction they take the game, and maybe us as a community just needs to pick up the slack, which I think we've done pretty well in the last like 6 months. Like we've been saying, the community tournaments and interest is growing, and our tournaments are really popping off. And I think Jason wants to say something so bad. I see him just waiting. All right, go ahead, man.
There's so much. There's so much. First off, when you were like, it's for the tournament, it's for the community to pick up the tournament slack or whatever, I was like, my shoulders are only so broad. Okay, I can fit only so much. I do love it though. I love the community. I love the scene so much. But yeah, I agreed with that. That was that one sentence, right? That said, we're gonna revamp things for the sustainability of seasonals, and like sustainability is like, I think we all read it as maybe cut back for longevity kind of thing, like bring it to a place where it's not costing them a lot of money and they can just keep doing it, which I think is what we all kind of all read into. And yeah, and I was really disappointed after Worlds. I thought, Worlds, they're gonna like, this is it. They're gonna be like, and guess what's coming next year? We got like a halfway to Worlds tournament and another Worlds, and like now seasonals is 50 G's, like let's go. And then instead it was like nothing. And then like weeks later it was like TBD, see you guys next year. Like in like 6 months or 5 months or something, we will have an announcement of things. It was like, what a letdown. That was like a real I don't know, wind coming out of the sails, because like it was everything had crescendoed up to Worlds and you had all the eyes on you, and it was like, give people a reason to come play your game now that tens of thousands of people are watching it concurrently. And instead they're like, nah, we actually don't have anything else. We're gonna pump the brakes on this and come back. And we've heard nothing since then. But Riot's really good at keeping things under wraps and then just being like, hey, here's this thing that we've been doing for 6 years. You like that? Have you heard of Arcane? Kind of cool, right?
Have you heard of Arcane?
So, I'm optimistic that like, also, again, they're not idiots. They've had like, I don't know, 5 months to sort this out. So you got to think that like someone there has to be like, hey guys, we took 5 months to do this. If it's going to suck, people are going to be unhappy. Like someone there has to be like, hey, make this not suck. One of the main problems that they have is that their competitive is done via committee. So there's no person that is head of competitive at LOR. And a lot of things, there's a reason the terminology death by committee is a saying, because when you just have a bunch of people working on something and nobody owns it, it can cause problems. And everyone's like, maybe we should do this, maybe we should do that. Nothing really gets done. So I don't know. We'll have to see. It's getting very close now, finally. Still cautiously optimistic. One thing that I'll say, though, is when we have this discussion about bringing new players in versus satisfying the competitive, like I feel like it doesn't need to be one or the other. Like we can have both. Limited is a very good one. Like draft formats. brings in new players. It's very easy. Anyone can just like, oh, I click the cards, I make a deck, I go play. Cool, easy. And then for competitive people, we love it. So it's the most beloved format in Magic, not even close. It's a great competitive format. So like, boom, win-win there. Another one that's really interesting is like you guys are talking about with like grassroots tournaments, with us picking up the slack. One thing that WotC does well, that Wizards of the Coast Magic does well, that Runeterra is not doing, is incorporating the grassroots in to the tournament scene. Like, I can't keep going and finding thousands of dollars in sponsorship to give to the community for free. That's not a sustainable business model. And people don't really care about just playing for cash money, right? Like even a $5,000 tournament, if it was $5,000 cash money, $5 to enter, well, it's still like, yeah, that's cool. But like, we still won't get 1,000 people to like break even or whatever, or even 2,000, whatever it is. It's the same in Magic. People don't show up for like someone ran $100,000 prize pool tournament in Las Vegas. Like 50 people showed up. Nobody showed up. But when you run a Grand Prix, which qualifies you for the Pro Tour in Magic, like tens of thousands of people show up. Or if you have like a Pro Tour qualifier where you win like nothing, you would win like a box of product, but everyone pays like $20, $40, $50 to get in because they want the invitation to the Pro Tour. So what Riot needs to do is they can incorporate like whatever it is, Worlds or whatever big tournament, however they want to do it, incorporate grassroots so that we can give invites or buys or something into the Riot competitive play system, because that's something that people want, and then we can charge entry fees for that and make money, and then like there's your ecosystem, everybody wins, it's working. So you don't have to be like one or the other, and unfortunately that's not something that I've heard discussed at all. I would hope that if that became a thing that we would get talked to about it, but so far nothing.
I think to a little extent it's already happening. One thing that comes to mind is what you guys unfortunately don't have, and that is Lore Masters Europe. And I mean, even though it's an official Riot event, it's also partially organized, broadcasted, and so on by a separate company. And of course, it's not quite the same as literally funding a community member. It's still going through an already established company in a way that worked on other card games. But I mean, it does feel like a step in the right direction. And also it does, like, it includes a couple of things. It's an innovative format. It is more, I feel like it's a bit more competitive just because of the higher sample size and the lower entrant count than a seasonal tournament, right? So the level of play will be higher on average and the results are a bit more meaningful. So I feel like we do see signs of that, maybe going towards a bit more of a community-oriented approach. What I'm still worried about is the total interest high enough? Is the interest in viewership, the demand, is that high enough to justify investing all of that? Because that's probably the business decision that Riot has behind that. And if we now consider that LOR is more and more moving towards being very accessible on mobile players are not necessarily the most interested in competitive, or they won't be playing the game while they watch the World Championship on their second screen, right? Something that we probably do, or a stream of someone else, or even the freaking Chess World Championship, whatever it is. But yeah, maybe Margin, what would be your take beyond that? Or do you also get a similar feeling about the game moving closer to that direction?
I do. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's not exactly what I would like to see. But yeah, again, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think they released the game and they have had these competitive tournaments, right? They did the seasonals, they did the worlds. And I think you might have nailed it. I think they may have looked at it and gone, there's not enough interest for this. Like, this is not, perhaps we voted with our viewers, right? This is not enough interest in this for us to go push really hard in that direction. Maybe we'll push really hard in this direction instead. And I can't really blame them for that. What we can do as a community is try to show them there's a lot of interest, right? And I feel like over the last few months, interest has really picked back up in Runeterra as a whole. Interested to get your thoughts, but right after Worlds, there was like a 3-month dip. And I know for like content creators like me, and others it was like almost a dead zone. Like numbers were down.
Yeah.
And then right after it came back up.
I want to jump in on this. So I think there's like this misconception on a few things. So first off, you saw a massive dip in the player base after we didn't have Worlds to qualify for. North America didn't even get 700, I guess EU as well, didn't even get 700 Masters to like fill out. Whereas normally there's like, over 1,000 easily. So, I mean, right there, you see like a lot of, I don't know, like lack of interest, or like you see the interest in competitive. The second thing is like, it's not that much money. This is Riot Games we're talking about. They're currently paying out what, $60,000 every other month. That's like less than one of their employees makes. Like that's like nothing. This is Riot Games. Like, are you kidding me? And then Worlds is 200K once a year. It's like this is not like a big part of their budget. This is not a huge amount of money. And so I get what people are trying to say with like, oh, maybe the dollars don't make sense. But when you see the massive drop off in people playing your game because you don't want to shell out freaking $30,000 a month, like come on, there's not. That's marketing. You could put $30,000 into advertising and you're not going to get that much interest back, which is another thing that I don't think we haven't seen yet is them really pushing like a lot of advertising.
Advertise their games. Just doesn't really happen.
What? Much. No, I get league ads, bro. I don't even play League. I get league ads.
But I don't see
recently there has been a spike in sponsored streams. I'm not sure if you were noticing if it was at the same hours that you were awake, but recently Amas did a sponsored stream on Legends of Runeterra, for example, with like 10K viewers because of Prime sponsorship, and a couple of other content creators. Like I don't quite remember the names, but there were a couple of big names that pull in a couple thousand viewers. And at least on Twitch, a sponsored stream, like they didn't used to do that at all, or at least not frequently.
You know what's interesting?
And now I'm noticing it more often.
That's not Riot.
It's not
That's
Riot.
Not Riot.
It's Amazon Prime.
Amazon?
It's
That's
Twitch. It's Twitch that does it.
Twitch is paying that money out.
So I did a sponsored stream for Runeterra, and Riot told me this before. They're like, if you get a sponsored stream for Runeterra, it's not us. We do not sponsor streamers. So Twitch approached me and said, we'll pay you to stream Runeterra.
Shocking, right?
Yeah. Most people don't know that. I didn't even know that.
Like
people
it's
are on Twitch.
LOR specifically.
Nothing. They sponsor a bunch of games. It's to get people interested in different things, so that maybe if you watch another game, you'll find streamers you like there, and you'll watch more. Yeah.
To move the audiences around so there's more interest in the platform in general. Yeah, right? Shocking. We didn't know that either. You totally just assumed that that the company's doing it.
Okay. But okay, I mean, Riot is also one of those companies that don't have to do a lot of advertisement. I think for lore it would still be nice. It feels like a lot of people would like it, but they just never heard of it, and there's no way they realize that the game exists. But one thing I do think is interesting, or you go ahead first.
I was just going to say it also. So one, on top of it being a very small amount of money when you're talking about Riot Games, like this is an inconsequential amount of money. Two, having people chase that dream, having people like the three of us, BBG, Nick Makes Plays, whoever, streaming, making content, drumming up interest, writing articles, being on podcasts, like that all trickles down into like the rest of the world, the rest of the community. Like that cannot be understated how much marketing and exposure the game gets from, again, this tiny amount of money. So like whenever like everyone makes this argument in the community, we're like, no, it just doesn't make dollars and cents. I'm like, come on, are you kidding me? Like the amount of money we're talking about here is like nothing. It's like it's so little.
Mm-hmm. I admit I don't know exactly the numbers, and Riot doesn't really reveal them, but I do think we need to differentiate a bit between Riot Games as a whole company and the LOR department, because as long as LOR keeps dipping in numbers and being in negatives, it's they're not going to support it forever, and maybe that's what's going on with the season. Another thing I was thinking about earlier on when we were comparing the basically the hardcore competitive scene of LOR to games like Magic or Artifact or even poker, I think one big difference might be that in a game like Magic, the the whole competitive circuit also invests a lot of money into the game to always have all the collections, always be up to date. It was the same with Artifact to a certain extent. Definitely the same with poker. The biggest players pay more fees for tournaments and so on. In LOR, that's not necessarily the case. Arguably, the competitive players even pay less money for the game overall because they don't care about skins.
Yes.
They don't play it
Yeah.
for the skins. And they get all of the cards for free anyway.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I totally agree with you there.
Maybe the focus is more in the masses of casual players. At least I get that it might absolutely make sense from a business standpoint.
Yeah, you make a good point. Like, I don't think that Runeterra makes money. Like, I think it probably loses money almost for sure. And I totally agree that the amount of times I see like name players, like, top players, and they have the basic board and like the basic Poro or the one Poro you got for free. I'm like, you couldn't buy one board. You couldn't give them like one board worth of money. You've played this game like all day, every day for the last like year and a half or something. That gets me every time. And so you're totally right. Like the competitive community is very small compared to the rest of the mountain. And we also spend much less money compared to everyone else. That's totally true. But it's also true in Magic. I played competitive Magic for years, and I just didn't spend any money. But all of my friends, they had all the cards, they spent lots of money, and I would just borrow from them. Most pro players were the same. A lot of them don't have collections, but there's this huge amount of casual people, and they do, and there's arguments that like you can make both ways, but I think at least that they do like aspire to be like whoever, Majin or of whoever that is in Magic to try and climb that mountain. But yeah, the economies being different is a huge issue for sure. I don't know, like you say, Runeterra just gives you all the cards for free and then tries to be like, buy skins and boards and stuff, which I think they could do a better job of. I'd like to see, I mean, again, who knows, but I would love to see them like be cheaper and have more of them, because like some of them are just like the skins are like pretty expensive. I was like, I'm gonna buy all these skins, and then I was like, oh, they're how much? And like I get it for like $15 buy the pack, like the pool party pack. It's like, yeah, $50. And you get like a bunch of champions that like never even see play, or like the skins aren't even like that good. Like some of them are good, some of them aren't. So yeah, the revenue model is something I hope they figure out, because I totally agree with you there. They need to be making money for the whole thing to keep going.
I want to piggyback off something Lobster said. And I've heard this stated from people at Riot, is that Legends of Runeterra is not League of Legends, right? And that means a lot of things. Like, one, they don't have League of Legends money. They do have extra, right? Like you said, maybe Runeterra is not even profitable, and that, it could be a loss leader or something, and that's just how they want it to go. But in order for the game to see significant investment, it likely needs to be profitable. It needs to be something that they see that it's worth investing in. And yeah, I'd like to see some cosmetic changes as well. I think they could do a little bit better. And I'm going to say something that's going to be super controversial. So many people are going to disagree with this. I think the game's biggest strength, which is how easy it is to get into and how like free to play friendly it is actually its biggest detriment at the same time. I know so many people who play the other card games and continue to play every day because they want to fill out their collection. Yeah. And stuff. I know that when I'm not playing to like hit a high rank, practice for a tournament, or try out a new deck, my interest in playing goes down because I have nothing to strive for, right? Like, I love filling out a collection. It's one of my favorite parts of playing these games.
A lot of people, yeah.
And I don't get that, which is ultimately a plus, but I think it makes it a lot harder to retain people because of that.
Well, it makes sense. It's a bit less, let's say, investment into the card collection, and a bit less of the feeling that you have to work to get everything. It's a double-edged sword for sure, like making it more accessible versus retaining in a way. Jay, do you have any ideas on that? It's a very interesting topic.
Yeah, so I totally agree. Like you were just saying, like earlier, Lobster, when you were like, talking about other card games, and you were kind of a collector, and you're like, oh, I got to get that. Oh, they came out with that thing. Like, I got to get that one. Lots of people are like that. I've heard of lots of people
I'm like
that,
that.
yeah, a lot. Exactly. You see it in Magic. You see it in just everything, right? Just every collectible imaginable. Um, and so yeah, and so it comes down to, how do you change the business model. One thing I was thinking of, though, is like, you need something to grind, right, is what you're saying, and that's how video games are set
Mhm.
up, right? You like, it's that whole, like, you dangle a little carrot, and you get the carrot, and you get a little hit of dopamine in your brain, and then, hey, there's a new carrot, and you just keep going, right? That's how like every video game ever like works. And yeah, I've heard lots of people say like, oh, I got all the cards, what do I do now? Um, One of the things I was thinking, though, was the champion level up. It seemed like maybe they were trying to do something there where it's like, oh, you level
Mhm.
up your champion and it gets like new interesting things, and like that could be some
Oh,
sort of
like a mastery
progression
system.
system. Exactly, yeah. But it doesn't really work out that much because you just get the little thing at the bottom that changes, and it's not really like. But if you're like, imagine if you're like, I don't know, if your Ezreal started as like normal Ezreal, and then it turned into like slightly cooler Ezreal, and then it turned into like even
Hmm.
like more cool. Like if the skin changed when you leveled it up, like that's pretty dope. And like it just keeps going to rarer and rarer skins. Like that's something I would be interested in. I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta get my like my every enter champion here up to that sweet skin. And there's so many champions, and you could just keep pushing the bar farther and farther and farther down the road, which obviously is, I'm just giving you an example of something that you could do, but that's something that I would grind, something that I'd be interested in. And they do need something like that. I totally agree with you, Bae, that they need like that replayability, basically, right? It's like, why do you need a reason to keep playing the game? And currently, it's not there. The competitive, it's not really there. Even the ladder system, you're incentivized to stop playing once you get to a high enough rank if you're trying to go for the 7 and 2, or you make the top 1200 or whatever, it's top 700 to qualify
Mhm.
for seasonals, and then you just whatever, you stop playing. So there is the ladder, and then there's just nothing else. There's Path of Champions. I guess they tried to do it, same sort of thing, right? I don't know. I didn't play it. I'm a competitive crazy person. I don't play casual. But I think they're trying to do that, right? They're trying to crack that code to figure out how to get that replayability. And yeah, it's tough.
Have you guys like remember back when before there was the 7 and 2 cut for seasonals, you'd hit the masters because like for players like us, making it into seasonals is not really in the question, right? Like you're gonna make it into
Mhm.
seasonals, so
It's a
you'd
matter
make
of
it into
time.
the seasonals cut, and then what,
And then what?
right? Like I would log on and I'd click play and I'd be like, is there anything specific I want to play today? Not particularly. And then I'd be like, I guess I could grind for arbitrary ladder points that don't mean anything. And that felt bad. And all I wanted, I would sit there with the game open for like 20 minutes. And all I wanted was like a reason to play. I just
Yeah.
wanted any reason to play.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I got one. I got one. Okay, Lobster, check this out. Magic the Gathering Arena has this thing that they came out with, which I never thought in a million years they would do. It's called an Arena Open. And so you can win real cash money in like a one weekend. So it's like, imagine like, I'll give it in Runeterra terms. On day one, you can spend, I don't know, like 5,000 coins to enter a gauntlet, and you have to get like, I don't know, 6 wins or 7 wins, like match wins, before you lose like 2 or 3. And if you
Mhm.
do, you qualify for Sunday. So it starts on Saturday, you qualify for Sunday, and on Sunday, if you keep playing until you either get 7 wins or like 2 losses. And if you hit 7 wins, you get 2,500 USD. If you get, I think it's 8 wins now. If you get 7 wins, you get 2,000. If you get 6 wins, you get 1,000. If you get 5 wins, you get like a bunch of coins. Four
Yeah. And
wins,
then,
you
and
get
then
some
it's like, yeah,
coins,
in game currency,
and it
in game
just
currency,
goes
in game
down.
currency.
And so pro players and casuals will like love this. A lot of people have given them shit because they're basically just like, I'm sure if you crunch the numbers, the amount of money you're
The
bringing
EV is
in
bad.
before
Yeah.
the EV is like not fantastic. But for hardcore competitive people like us, we love it. I play in them. I don't even play Magic anymore,
Yeah.
but I'm still like, fuck it. I want to go gamble and like try to win some money. It's a good time. Like I played in the last one, I'd played 0 games of the format. Didn't even know all the cards. But I was like, oh, cool. What's this? Let's like take my $50. I don't care. Was fantastic. Love it. And so, even people that are not particularly good, you still got a chance. There's like thousands of people play it. So like, there's lots of other people that are bad. You'll still go on a little run. It's still not that hard to qualify for day 2. But it just gives you something to do, like a way to play the game. And then they make a bunch of money also.
I personally love that idea. I absolutely love it. Like, it gives people a reason to grind that actually matters. Because like grinding for those mastery points and for, I don't know, like badges that no one ever really sees, it, especially the competitive players are the ones that care the least about it, right? But if you give them something like try to expand the ecosystem, even if it's not something you could actually do as a job, but just having that extra incentive of being validated for competitive play. I think that's something that is missing a lot in these Riot tournaments as well. Like, in how the seasonal tournament is structured, especially the old version. Like, they've gotten better and better at it, but back then when the seasonal tournament open rods was literally 5-0, it was like, okay, come on, are you kidding me? Like, this is going to be some Russian roulette every round. And I'd absolutely love this. I immediately have to think of the poker comparison here, because poker in itself is not a beautiful game. It's not necessarily gorgeous or fun or anything like that. It's very arbitrary and rigid, but the reason people play it is because it's something meaningful to grind for. Like, if you get better, long term you win money, and money is something relevant for most people, right? And expanding on that ecosystem, I think, would just be an extra, like another approach on giving people a reason to play the game. And I think I'd love for them to test it. It hasn't really been tested yet. I just think that right now Riot is focusing on other stuff, like the single player mode, expanding into the
Hopefully
mobile
limited.
market and so on.
Who knows?
Hopefully limited.
Another thing it kind of reminds me of, not quite, a little different, but I was actually a huge fan of the marketplace in Artifact. I was like, this is so brilliant. I do think they screwed up by initially charging for all the events, because like you had to buy the game and you had to buy in your entry for the events, and I think that's where like that was probably their biggest thing that they messed up on. But like I love that. And then another random example that actually means something is like,
sorry, for those of us that don't know, could you sell your cards on the marketplace, like win cards and sell them?
Yeah, it was ahead of its time. It's like, imagine they were all NFTs.
Yeah. They literally
you could sell and buy. It was a real marketplace.
They called it X-Coin, right? X was the best card in the game, and it was like, I'm going to invest in X-Coin. Some people bought 300 copies of the strongest card in the game and were expecting the price to rise. NFTs, hello? It's literally the same.
It's exactly the same. But like Flesh and Blood offers a different card game, Flesh and Blood, only paper. But if you do well in these specific tournaments, you win versions of these cards that you can only get at these tournaments. And I don't miss these tournaments because I want these cool versions, right? So like when I can, I go to these, even if I'm not super interested in the tournament, because I want the cool thing. So like, even if you put like, you have a weekly gauntlet, right? And at the top is a prismatic, not some stupid icon. I don't see the icons. I don't even see my own icon, right?
I hate icons.
But I hate icons. But like you put something that matters, some like a cool border on like Ezreal that's super special, or like it makes all your mystic shots full art and they have like a little animation, right? Like I would play in every single one of those.
Yeah, you gotta get the carrot. Okay, this reminds me of something. So Magic Online is this program of Magic that came out in the year 2000, and it's archaic. You have to click everything as if it was paper. Magic Arena is the brand new LOR Hearthstone looking one that's beautiful and does everything for you.
Also technically free to play.
Technically free to play, whereas you can't trade or sell the cards. The old version, you could trade and sell the cards. You own them. You can make money. So if you win a tournament, you get packs. You can sell those for real money. One of the best players in the world said he would rather play the old, like terrible looking AI version than the new version, because he wants to play for stakes. He wants to play for things that matter. He can win 1 million drafts over here and win all the cards, but he just
They don't
has
matter,
them.
yeah.
They don't matter. It's like LOR. You just have more of the cards. Whereas here, with the crappy version of the game, he can sell them and like make some money. And he would rather, even it's nothing money, $20, whatever. Well, sometimes it's more, but still, it's you can make some money. So playing for stakes is what's important. And going back to my example of the where you can win money on Arena now, it seems like they had to do that just to have some sort of way for you to play for stakes. And because LOR is in the free-to-play model, it seems like they need something that is like that, because you can't do the cool thing where you can sell the cards like you're talking about in Artifact.
It's a super interesting topic. One thing that it reminds me of a comparison is Axie Infinity. Like,
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I don't know much about the game. It doesn't look super enticing or interesting at first sight. Like, okay, maybe the core gameplay is fun, but that doesn't justify the huge success the game has. And it's literally just that idea of play to earn, play to win. Yeah. And arguably making a little bit of money, even if it's just a side income, or for very few, maybe it is a full-time income. That can get a lot of players on its own. Absolutely.
Yeah, the money's nuts. On their leaderboard, each month they're giving you like $100,000, $200,000. You get first place on their leaderboard, it's like 20,000, 40,000. It's like crazy numbers. Imagine if we could play Runeterra and you got like 20 grand just for finishing first on the leaderboard or something like that. It's like, bah! Even like, I think it was like 100th place got like $4,000, or I'm probably butchering these numbers, but it was big money, like real money.
We can do that. You just have to pay $1,000 for your burn deck. that's how that would be paid for. Not really worth it.
Yeah,
but I get you.
No, it's very interesting though. I think there is a huge potential there to expand the ecosystem, but it would also be a very tough thing to do, I think. On one hand side, like regulations, maybe even ethics, especially in a card game. Like, I'm not sure if it does go into the direction of gambling. Like, for example, the Magic tournament system that you propose.
Totally. I don't know how Magic does that or gets away with it. They are so crazy about anti-gambling laws. If you went to one of their in-life tournaments and you're just hanging out by yourself with friends and you want to do a draft for like $10 or something, like they would come over and be like, no, get the fuck out. Like, no, like you're we call it money drafting. And if anyone heard money draft, they're like, what are you doing? Like, we will remove you. That's how it's like, no, we're funzy drafting for 10 high fives. Right, guys? Because that's how anti-gambling they were. And now here they are just being like, ship us your credit card and we will ship you straight cash dollars. Let's go. So I don't know what changed over there, but yeah, things have definitely changed. You're right, though. Yeah, the whole ethics of it and like lots of things get crazy. I will say, though, free-to-play is a real concern. And I hope that the people at Runeterra are, because now that they're not even just competing against Magic, Hearthstone, whatever, now they have to compete against someone that makes like an LOR clone, it's a game that's very similar, and then just has this like play to earn component jammed in there where you can win real money, and all of a sudden it's like it's kind of tough to compete with that. So I hope they're keeping an eye on these things. Okay, we need to wrap up because Maja and I have to go jump on the Team Runeterra weekly call. Lobster, thank you so much for joining us.
I have one more final question,
joy.
if that's fine.
Go ahead.
Yes, no. I was going to say, do you have any final thoughts? Jump in.
Okay. Very interesting thought I had throughout this whole discussion, actually, in the back of my mind is, do you think the competitive level of play would drastically increase if there was more incentive to play? Or to put it the other way around, do you think right now the competitive level of play in LOR is a bit lower? And especially thinking about what Marjan said earlier on, like in Magic not really having been a big name, but switching to LOR and immediately just popping off kind of on the competitive side of things, did you feel like the competition is just lower because there's less of an incentive?
1,000,000% yes.
Yes. Yeah. And then like I've also, like, to be fair, Runeterra is a lot newer, and like in the first seasonal, like people sucked, bro. Like I was terrible.
And people still suck.
And people still suck. But like we're all getting better at a rate. And I think like once seasonals and seasonals helped, and then Worlds was announced, and all of a sudden people got better. Like just like all of a sudden. But it does take a card game a bit of time to find its groove. Like I mentioned Flesh and Blood. I've been playing Flesh and Blood. I was playing the game for 2 weeks and I showed up and I like top 32 to a couple thousand person tournament. Like, but now I probably couldn't do that. Now I would have to practice only 5 months later, right? And I think it's the same thing for LOR. But if you had cash, if you had the opens, right, like we were talking about with MTG, if you had cash prizes up top, if you had more tournaments, I think, yeah, the skill level would absolutely shoot up. Maybe not at the very top level, but the average of the competitors would go up.
1,000,000%. 1,000,000%. It's an arms race. You see everyone getting better. And if you inject a bunch of cash or incentive, everyone's going to get better a lot faster. You see it in everything all the time. Look at poker. Before Chris Moneymaker hit the scene, people were god awful. They're a joke terrible. Fast forward to today, and it's like people are absolute murderers at that game. Like everything has been dissected like crazy. It's, you go play like a 1-2 game and you got freaking like math majors that are like, next level. You see it look at football, like they make huge football, basketball, baseball. People used to be like drinking beers and like, on the in between rounds and stuff, like halftime, go have a beer. Like it was like there wasn't a lot of money in it, right? Whereas now the best athletes in the world are playing like basketball, football, baseball, because like that's where the money's at. And you see like every one of those games have just gotten better and better and better and better. Hockey, with all the games. So yeah, 1,000% yes. And I can see it too, pretty plainly. I can see, if you've been doing this stuff for long enough, you can kind of tell like where people are at and stuff. And there's a lot of people in Runeterra that are quite good, but like they're not doing it full time. They're not putting that much work into it. And like, yeah, they're pretty good. And you can see how some people are definitely a cut above for sure. And yeah, we're all pretty bad. Like when you look back at like early Magic, it's like, you look at World Championship decks, like, look at you guys, you're cute. You're just like this card or that card. And like, you could have been playing that stuff. We're doing that right now. Like, look back, like Maju was saying, seasonal's #1. And you look back on like the decks people played and top 32 with, and it's like a joke, right? If we went and teleported back there, we would play the 3 best decks and we would just destroy everyone and it wouldn't be close. And that was 1 year ago, and you can see how far we've come. So yeah, 100%, I think yes.
All right. Yeah, I had the same impression. But that was my final question. All I can say is thanks for having me. It's been super duper fun. That end up on being a very like in-depth discussion on the competitive side of things, but good timing just before the roadmap hits, and who knows what the future will bring.
Yeah. I actually planned for this to be mostly a content discussion. I wanted to talk about.
I thought so as well, because we're not that much.
Each other.
Absolutely agreed.
Well, we'll have to have you on again. You know what? We'll get the announcement, and then we'll get you back on again, and we'll talk about like all the things, like what we were right about, what we were wrong about, what we think about the announcement, and then we can go all into the competitive or into the content creation. Because it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. Thank you so much for being on, and like I said, we'll have you on again soon. But I think that's it for us for today. Thank you everyone for listening at home, and we'll see you guys again next week. Bye.